Welcome to Pipeline Health Paragon 23 Basic Nurse Education series on Flowsheet. Flowsheet enables you to view and enter multiple types of clinical data such as vital signs, intake and output, measurements, and IV management. You can access the Flowsheet window by clicking on Flowsheet in the primary toolbar or double-clicking on the FS button located in the Care Glance window. On the Care Glance window, select the encounter for which you want to enter or view clinical data. To view the clinical data entry, you may click on the plus sign located on the top left-hand side to expand. The latest vital sign entry will always display on the left side of the screen. To manually enter vital signs, right-click on a free blank space and select New Vital Sign Entry. Enter the vitals in the appropriate field. Note that the date and time defaults to the current date, but you can change it if needed. For example, I'm going to change the time to 12, enter the set of vitals, temperature. The temperature unit is defaulted to Fahrenheit. However, you can click on the drop-down and change it if needed. The temperature site displays oral as the site is locked. Enter the blood pressure. The blood pressure site is also selected as the site is locked. You have the ability to select a different site by clicking on the drop-down and select the appropriate site. You also have the ability to unlock the site by clicking on the key icon and it turns gray. Select the appropriate blood pressure position, blood pressure type. Although the drop-down fields are not required, you may want to enter as much information as you can. Enter the pulse, respiration, and the O2 set. In this window, you may also enter the patient's height and weight. You also have the ability to enter vital notes if needed by clicking on the paper icon and add a note. Click OK, and the icon turns yellow, indicating there is a note attached to that specific vital. If there are any additional vital sign entries, you may click on Insert New located on the top right-hand side. That'll bring down the vital sign, and you may enter the additional vital sign. Be sure to change the time. I'm changing the time to 12:30, entering a second set of vitals. Again, the temperature unit, and in this example, the temperature site is also selected. Enter the blood pressure, blood pressure site, blood pressure position, blood pressure type, the pulse, respiration, and the O2 set. If you wish to delete the vital sign entry, you may by clicking on Delete, which is located on the top right-hand side. To save the vitals, click OK at the bottom right, and it'll bring you back to the flow sheet. You may also document the intake and output in the flow sheet. Right-click on a free or blank space, select New, Intake and Output. The date and time defaults to the current date. You may change it if needed. Left side intakes, right side outputs. Note that the meals and snacks and supplement percentage codes for intakes are not included in the ml totaling. For example, say I want to document the patient ate their entire meal at noon. I'm going to type in 100. And I want to document that the patient drank 25 mLs of orange juice. I'm going to type in 25 and add a note by clicking on the paper icon and specify the oral intake. Orange juice. So now I have a total of 25 mLs. If an intake or output is not being measured by mLs, you may document how many times by clicking on the checkbox, on the count checkbox. For example, I want to document the patient voided twice, enter number 2, and check the count box. If there are any additional intake and output, you may click on Insert New located on the top right-hand side, or if you wish to delete the intake and output, you may click Delete. To save the entries, click OK at the bottom right, and it'll bring you back to the flow sheet. To view the information, you may click on the plus sign to expand. You may also enter measurements in the flow sheet by right-clicking on a free or blank space, New Measurements. For example, OB nurses may document the infant's head and chest circumference in measurements. Also, the glucometer interfaces with Paragon. However, during downtime, you can manually enter the blood glucose under measurements. You may also backdate and backtime if needed. If there are any additional measurements, you may click on Insert New and enter the measurements. Or if you wish to delete the measurement entry, you may click on Delete. To save the entries, click OK at the bottom right, and it'll bring you to the flow sheet window, and measurements will display underneath the intake and output. To document the IV site information, you will document in the flow sheet by right-clicking anywhere where it's blank, New IV Management. To enter a new IV site, highlight New IV Site, click OK, and enter the appropriate information. I'm going to select arm right. IV type is defaulted to venous. You may click on the drop-down and select the appropriate IV type. You may also select the appropriate gauge size and enter the appropriate site started date and time. The site started by will automatically display your name. However, if it was started by someone else, you may also select their name. Or you may add a note if you wish to by clicking on the paper icon. You have the ability to enter a note. Be aware that you are also going to enter the discontinued date and time in IV management whenever the IV site is removed. Once you're done entering the information, click OK at the bottom right. Click Yes to save the entries. As you can see, it opens the fluid section. However, you are not required to enter the fluid information, as when you document any IV fluid administrations in the MAR, that information will cross over to the flow sheet. You may then click Close. It will bring you back to the flow sheet. The IV site will not display on the main flow sheet window. However, to view the IV site list, you may go back into IV Management by right-clicking on a blank field, New, IV Management, and you will see the list of the available IV sites. Remember to enter the discontinued date and time in this window. For example, let's say I want to discontinue the site that was started on 12/21. Select, click OK, and then the discontinued date and time is open. Enter the appropriate date and time, and then click OK, and click Yes to save the entry. Make sure the date and time is correct. And then click Close. To close out of the flow sheet, you may click on the yellow arrow Close. By closing, it will finalize your clinical data entry. And now you're back to the care glance window.